Hey everyone! If there's been one thing that has been made clear over the past few weeks, it's that a lot of people do not like Israel. Hamas doesn't like Israel, Hezbollah, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, China, Harvard students, Yale students, and one other group that we apparently are adding to that very long list are the Houthis in Yemen. Now, you may be listening going, who the heck are they? And why do they matter for the Israel-Hamas conflict? Well, they matter a lot. This militant group in Yemen has been firing missiles into Israel and also conducting drone strikes at various commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Now, recently, I guest hosted for Dennis Prager's nationally syndicated talk radio show, and I welcomed Brandon Weichert onto the show. Many of you who listen to Timeless know Brandon. He is a geopolitical expert who has worked for the United States Department of the Air Force. He also is an energy analyst at the-pipeline.com, and he's written 3 books, one on Iran, one on China, and one on America. So he knows his stuff. And he came on Dennis's show and talked to me about the threat posed by these Houthis and what it means for United States and Israeli interests. I hope you enjoy the interview. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hey everyone, welcome to Timeless. It is great, as always, to be with you. Just as a reminder to please hit the subscribe button down below if you like what you see. You can also email me at julie@julie-hartman.com with any and all of your thoughts. And you can also follow me at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter. Brandon Weichert is a guest of Timeless. He has been on several times. And now, as I said in the intro, I interviewed him on Dennis Prager's radio show when I was guest hosting for Dennis just a few days ago. Enjoyed this interview. Whenever I do talk about political events, I often call on Brandon Weichert to come onto the show. I'm so grateful for his presence in our national discourse, and I'm so grateful that he's become my friend. I've learned so much from him. He has written 3 books, one of them about Iran. It's called The Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy. I have it here somewhere on my set. Oh yes, right next to me. That would be fitting, wouldn't it, for those of you watching? I'm holding it up. He is also the author of Biohacked, China's Race to Control Life, and Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower. In addition to writing those 3 books, Brandon is a geopolitical analyst who is a subject matter expert for the United States Department of the Air Force, if you've heard of that, and an energy analyst at the-pipeline.com. Today with Brandon, we're going to be discussing the event of the Houthi rebels in Yemen launching drone and missile strikes, not only at Israel, but at commercial vessels in the Red Sea. In fact, this is the cover story today of the Wall Street Journal, so it is an especially prescient time to talk about this. Brandon, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. Great to see you.
Well, thanks for having me back, and thank you for that lovely intro. I am honored as well at our friendship, and so here's to many more interviews. The Houthi rebel threat is not an isolated threat. Your audience should be aware that this is one of the many tentacles that the Iranians have, that they're reaching out to do damage not only to Israel and the Saudis, but more importantly to ourselves. And this is part of their, as my subtitle suggests, their quest for supremacy in Iran.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people listening may say, okay, Julie, you and Brandon are foreign policy nerds, but what do the Houthis in Yemen have to really do with our international state today? But as you said, they are one of the tentacles, not just of the Iranian regime, but as I would venture to say, and I think you would agree with me, of the Chinese Communist Party, because the CCP headed by Xi Jinping is really all powerful, unfortunately, and is pulling a lot of strings here in our international state. So let's dive in here specifically with this Houthi threat The Houthis are a rebel group in Yemen, as I understand. Are they
Mm-hmm.
Sunni? Are they Shia? How did this conflict emerge? Just give us a history on how this came to be.
Well, they are Shiite Muslim, and they are aligned closely with Iran because of that shared religious interpretation, and that actually puts them at odds not only with the dominant group in Yemen but also with the Saudis right next door. It's actually this is what we're experiencing with the Houthis is basically an extension, a long running failure that was started under the Obama administration. Former President Obama in 2009, I remember, was hailing his Yemen policy as a success. But actually, all he did was set the stage for a horrible civil war that allowed for Iran to move in and empower the Houthis, forcing the Saudis to then come in and empower the Sunni groups on the ground, in some cases, Al Qaeda. And now you've got this proxy war that's been raging in Yemen for almost a decade. The worst humanitarian crisis outside of Syria is in Yemen. And Iran is the instigator of this. And so now they're using the Houthis. They've trained them up. They've had them battle the Saudis and learn how to fight, a larger enemy. And now they're using the Houthis as proxies to fight both Israel and the United States. And they're targeting our shipping, which they believe the Americans under Biden will not do anything to protect. And thus far, that assumption has sadly been proven right.
Hmm. We talk about this a lot when you come on to Timeless, how different the world would be had the 1979 revolution in Iran not
Yeah.
happened. Isn't it amazing to contemplate that Iran, just a few decades ago, was not only pro American, but pro Israel? And
Right.
now it is transformed into this vehemently anti Israel country, which is such an expert of
Right.
evil as to stretch its tentacles, as you say, all across the Middle East and empower even a rebel group here in Yemen to carry out these drone strikes and missile strikes in the Red Sea. We only have a
Right.
few seconds more in this segment, so we're going to have to pick it up in the next segment. But I want to understand, you can speak to this a little bit, what exactly is going on in the Red Sea and how this matters, how this fits into United States and Israeli interests.
Well, basically, this allows for Iran to continue to destabilize the region, weakens America, weakens Israel, empowers themselves, and allows for them to move in with the Chinese and the Russians backing their play, which is the ultimate goal. The threat is that Iran is using these cutouts, these terrorist proxies, to basically stretch and strain America and its allies in the region, hoping that we won't respond directly to Iran. So basically, if Hamas doesn't attack against Israel, Iran has plausible deniability in their book, Hezbollah the same thing, and now we're seeing the Houthis. The Iranians are hoping that they will be able to score some hits on us and our allies without us hitting back too hard thus far. The one thing that the Houthis are doing that makes them an especially serious threat is that they are trying to force global shipping to sort of rearrange how it operates. So now you see major shipping companies can't get insurance to cross through this part of the world anymore. So they're having to transition to other choke points that are farther away. And over time, that will spike the price of goods everywhere for everyone, adding to our economic woes. This is intentional. This is part of the Iranian strategy to hurt America and the world economically until our behavior in the region changes. So we try to shape their behavior with sanctions and economic pressure. Iran's doing the same thing, only they're doing it differently. They're doing it through these terrorist organizations. So that's why I think that what we should be doing is, first of all, not waiting for a coalition of navies to come together, which is what Biden is doing. It should be the world's number one superpower, the United States, should have the ability to send some ships right off the coast of Yemen and blitz the bejesus out of Yemen until the Houthi rebels are either destroyed or they cease their attacks. And if it doesn't stop, we should also be willing to escalate directly against Iran, because the Iranians think they're impervious, and we need to teach them that they are not.
The Wall Street Journal wrote, their editorial group wrote a piece yesterday analyzing this, and I'd like to read a quote from that. They said, quote, "The expanding Houthi threat, like the Hamas massacre and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is another example of the disorder that spreads when United States deterrence fails." You are right that
Yes.
we have an emboldened Iran, which basically thinks that it can do whatever it wants to do. How did we get into this situation in the first place? When exactly did U.S. deterrence fail, and how so?
Well, it was starting to fail after 20 years of sort of mindless, endless war in the Middle East. But even then, we were still, the Trump administration was able to restore deterrence temporarily with the Abraham Accords plus the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. Basically, we united with the Israelis, with the Sunni Arabs led by Saudi Arabia to form a containment of Iran. And we basically laid down red lines and said, Iran, if you cross it, we're going to do things to you militarily, like we took out Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. That sent a clear message, and Iran backed down until Joe Biden became president. Joe Biden reversed all of the policies of Trump, including his successful Middle East policies, and he began to try to go back to the Obama era policy of appeasement with Iran. And it's very similar to Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler. You cannot appease a regime that is both Islamic and fascist. The last time I was on your show, we talked about Islamofascism. That's exactly what we're dealing with, and you cannot appease fascists or Islamists, because the fascist thinks in the supremacy of their state, and the Islamist thinks in the supremacy of their chosen faith, his Islam, in this case, Shia Islam. And so you're not going to negotiate with people like that. They're going to use you, and they're going to wait till you're weak to kill you or convert you. And that's what you're dealing with in Iran. And that's why we should not be dealing with them and trying to make them a normal country again. That regime is the problem. It must be contained.
If you were president right now, given our history or lack thereof of deterrence, what would you do to combat this threat of Iran and China and protect Israel?
Well, the first thing I would do is go full bore back to the Abraham Accords. You tell the Saudis, you tell the Israelis, you got to get together. We will back your play 100%. We'll give you all the resources, all the money you need, all the intelligence you need, because what we basically need to do is what we did to the Soviet Union. We need to create a regional alliance in the Middle East, and we need to contain Iran until that regime withers and dies on its own, which it will, just like the Soviet Union did, because we were applying pressure on the outside, and eventually the people were tired of that regime. The same thing can happen in Iran, but it requires unity with our allies, consistent leadership from America, and a containment policy. That also, by the way, would stymie China, because if we bring Saudi Arabia and Israel together under our umbrella, they will be less likely to seek to do independent deals with China. And if China can only go to Iran and Iran is permanently contained, then that's a dead end for Chinese power in the region. We've just won the day. And if we have to blow up the Houthis in order to do that, if we have to hit Hezbollah, if we have to hit Hamas in the process, or support those who want to do that in the region, we should do that.
In the next segment, we'll pick up more with this, but I want to talk about how China fits into this. You've been referencing it. I've been referencing it. As you know, Brandon, I wrote an article in the Epic Times and also in the American Mind saying that I think that it's very likely that China, at the very least, knew about the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th and probably helped to make it happen. So we're going to more clearly establish again in our remaining time in the next segment how China fits into this. But my gosh, if there's one thing at the very least we can glean from this conversation is that the forces of evil in the world far outnumber the forces of good. Before we continue with Brandon, I would like to tell you about MyPillow. MyPillow is excited to bring you their biggest bedding sale ever just in time for Christmas. Get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, a set of pillowcases for only $9.98, and rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. They also have blankets in a variety of sizes, colors, and styles. They also have blankets for your pets. Get duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more, all with the biggest discounts ever. They're also extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1st, 2024, making them the perfect gifts for your friends, your family, and everyone you know. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 and you'll get big discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, and get all your shopping done now while quantities last. And now, back to my interview with Brandon. How does China fit into this Houthi threat in the Red Sea and to Israel?
Well, generally speaking, the hidden hand of China can be seen in all of these crises, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, the current crisis in the Middle East, the possibility that Venezuela might invade Guyana, or even the North Korean recent testing of his intercontinental ballistic missiles. All of this is the hidden hand of China. They have been, for several years now, working to build an anti-American coalition all across the Eurasian plain, and they have built it. They've got China, they've got Russia, they've got Iran, North Korea. They're even looping in now NATO members like Turkey into their fold. And so we have a big problem here because Iran is operating with the notion that it has great power of support, notably from China, but from Russia as well, and they're correct.
Condoleezza Rice called them the new axis of evil, the Iran, Russia, and China threat.
I avoid that term given the
bet.
implications, but she's not wrong. They are certainly an axis that's coming for us.
Brandon, it is so nice to have you on. Thank you very much for your time. In our final minute, I'd like to ask you, the 2024 election is just less than 365 days away. What does this situation mean? Should American voters be paying a lot of attention to this foreign crisis in addition to our own domestic issues?
Yes. Well, they're all connected at this point. The whole country started to really go down when Joe Biden was sworn in. And so I can't stress enough, whoever is the Republican nominee, probably Trump, could be DeSantis, but most likely Trump, whoever it is of those two men, we need to support them because Joe Biden is the single worst president of the modern era. And if he gets another term or his party gets another term, then all these crises become permanent and everything gets worse.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this interview. I'm very eager to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, take care, enjoy the holidays, and I'll see you here on Timeless soon.